If you're just starting your van life journey and looking to start your DIY van build and you don't know where to start, this video is for you. If you're new here, this is Camping with Shane. I just got done living in my van for about 4 months in Lake Tahoe over the winter, and now I'm back home ready to rebuild my van from scratch. So I'm going to be starting this little DIY series. So we're starting off with some tools because you're going to need tools to start any van build. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're starting off with power tools. The most important tool of any build is the drill. You're going to need to get a cordless drill. I would highly recommend a cordless drill because you don't want to be dealing with a cord when you're building your van. You want to have your drill nice and handy wherever you need it. So the drill is the most important thing. You don't need to spend a lot of money on a drill. I got this one on sale for $70 at Home Depot. You can go to Harbor Freight. You can get one for as little as $20. I wouldn't recommend getting one that cheap. I would say spend at least like 50 bucks. You know, they got a nice one for 50 bucks, I think, or even 30 bucks. But yeah, nice drill. That's step one, first thing you're gonna need. And then the second thing you're going to need is a jigsaw. Now, a jigsaw you can get away with building your van with, you know, just a drill and a jigsaw. You know, pretty basic build. Because a jigsaw you can cut your 2x4s, you can cut your plywood, you can cut, you know, holes through your walls. You know, if you plan on cutting holes through your walls, you're probably going to have more tools, but you could do it with just a drill and a jigsaw if you get a proper bits, but we'll go over bits later on. But if you have some extra money and you want to get some more tools, a good one to add to your collection is a circle saw, because a circle saw is going to cut your 2x4s super easily. It's going to make it clean cut. The jigsaw can't cut the 2x4s, but it's going to be harder to get that perfect cut, you know, nice and square. You're going to want that when you're building a van. So the circle saw is super good for cutting the 2x4s and for, you know, chopping down plywood. You know, so you can get nice, straight, even cuts, nice squared up cuts. When you're building your van, you're going to want square cuts, you know, good cuts. Measure twice, cut once. You know, the jigsaw, you can do it with the jigsaw, but it's not going to be as perfect. So these two are needed. They're necessities. In the drill, or the circle saw, I would say is a necessity, but you can get away without it. So the next power tool that I want to go over is definitely not a necessity, but it does make everything a lot easier. It is a nice miter saw. You want to get a miter saw. I got this one for 80 bucks on sale at Harbor Freight. It's pretty decent. It's Chicago Electric. A nice corded miter saw. And yeah, this just makes cutting, ripping 2x4s super easy. 2x2s, you know, anything that you need to cut to length. Makes it super easy, super clean cuts. And yeah, it is a great purchase. You know, if you got the money, I would recommend getting yourself a miter saw. And then the last tool we'll go over that you don't need, but it's nice to have, is a nice sander. I got this one for $6 at the thrift store. So, you know, you don't need to spend a ton of money on tools. You could probably get all of these tools at the thrift store if you know, luck out and find a good deal. They're usually not too expensive, so, you know, if you're on a budget, always check your local thrift stores before you go out and purchase something from the store. If you're not doing anything too crazy, just you know, piece of sandpaper and some elbow grease will get the job done. Especially just on like corners and stuff. You could, you know, it's no problem doing it by hand. Alright, so now we're gonna go over our hand tools. It's pretty basic. You don't need much. You know, there is a lot of tools that you can get, but necessities is pretty minimal. You know, you want to have yourself a nice speed square. This is going to help you, you know, just make nice square cuts. You know, make sure things are squared up. And yeah, it's a good tool to have. It does have a ruler on it, you know, depending the size. You can pick one of these up for like 10 bucks. And then a level. You're going to need a level to make sure everything is level. You know, not only square, but level. You know, you can do this one, you can do it up. Make sure it's level going up. Make sure it's level on the top. This one even has, I believe it's a 45-degree angle level on it too. You can pick up one of these for like $5-10 at the hardware store. And then what I have in my hand, you're gonna need a pencil or a pen to mark stuff, and paper to write stuff down to make your measurements and everything. And this next tool, some people don't know about these. They're super awesome. It's called a chalk line, or like a chalk straight line. And what it does is when you're cutting down your plywood, you're trying to make, say I have to cut off 3 inches of this piece of plywood. I just make my marks 3 inches on this side, 3 inches on that side. And then what it does, you just line it up. It has one metal part that attaches. So you line it up with your marks, and then just take it along to that other mark, line it up, get some tension. Oh, I messed that up. Get some tension, and then just boom, snap it down. Got yourself a straight line. I already did it a couple times, so but you get yourself a straight line going across. Comes super handy when you're cutting down 2x4s, or not 2x4s, when you're cutting down plywood. So you can make sure you get some nice straight cuts and have a nice straight line to follow with your circle saw or your jigsaw. If you're using the jigsaw to cut out big plywood, you can do it nice. You just have to go really slow. There's different tips that you can use for your jigsaw. This one is a wood clean, so like you can do like a more clean cut or like a more rough cut, depending on which bit you have. So the next hand tool is obviously the tape measure. You're going to need a tape measure so you can measure everything out. It's pretty self-explanatory. So you use that one, measure out your wood, measure out the van, everything, and yeah. So that's pretty much it for your basic hand tools that you need. Say if you have these, you're going to be pretty good set off. Another thing you can do is you can get some clamps like this one. This is a pretty small clamp. I have a couple of different sizes. They're all in my van right now, but you can get yourself a set of clamps. They always help out. You don't absolutely need them, but they're nice to have. Now that we've gone over the necessity hand tools, I want to show you guys some more extra tools that'll help make the job get done easier. So I don't have too many, but I do have a couple. They're called the Craig jigs. You might be familiar with them. They're like the blue ones. So this first one, this one is for like hanging door hinges. It's like it drills out a nice circle, and then has a guide for drilling out the holes. So when you're attaching like a cabinet or something, putting on a cabinet. So it's good for those. I only used it once though. I might use it some more once I start to build my van up, but just little tools like that. And then this next one I do actually use a lot. It's the pocket hole jig. So you can make pocket holes with it. You can put it on the wood and then drill into it. So if you're connecting two pieces, instead of like drilling it on the outside in and having screws out revealing it, you can drill out the inside a little pocket hole so that you can connect them from the inside rather than having the screw showing on the outside. It's a pretty nice tool. It's good for working with more fragile wood, like making cabinetry and stuff. I don't know exactly what it's called, but you can attach your circle saw to it, and then you can measure out 18 inches, 24 inches, however long you want to cut a piece, and then it has a guide on the side, so then it will attach to the wood. So say I need to cut off 12 inches, and I can slide it over to the correct size, 12 inches, and then rip off a piece at 12 inches. So it's super nice if you're making a bunch of cuts at like say 12 inches. You just line it up once, lock it in, and then you just go oh, it's called a rip cut. That's what it's called. Yeah, you just rip it. So it's a pretty nice tool, especially if you're building a van, because you can get nice, it aids with getting nice straight cuts because it has the guide that follows on the side. Alright, so that is all the basic tools that you need to start on your DIY van build. Now there's a ton more tools out there that you could use. There's unlimited tools, but these are just some of the more basic ones that I wanted to highlight that you can pretty much build a nice little camper for yourself with. You don't need anything too fancy. Some of the equipment I have here was a little bit expensive, but You know, if you're looking to build a nice van, you're going to want to get some nice equipment. But if you're on a budget, you really don't need to spend too much to get going, like I said. So let's go over the pricing of it. If you're looking, if you're super on a budget and you're just looking to get the bare minimum to build your van, you're looking at spending about $150. About 100 of that is going towards power tools. Depending on the deal you get, how much money. You can obviously spend a lot less than that. You could just spend $20 on a drill, $20 on a jigsaw, and then like $15 on some drill bits and jigsaw bits. So you really could spend like $60, but that's like super budget. But I would recommend spending about $100 on some gear. And then for hand tools, for the absolute basics, you're looking at spending about $35, and you can get yourself pretty much everything we went over that you need. And it's really not too bad. So you're looking at about $130, $150 tops for a super basic set of tools that you'll be able to build out your van in. And then for the extra tools, you're going to be spending, I probably spent about $400 on the extras that I've shown in this video. You don't need to spend it, but some of them you really don't need. Some of them are really nice to have, like the miter saw. I would recommend getting a miter saw. Even if you just had a miter saw, a jigsaw, and a drill, you'd be pretty well off. Because there's ways to make super straight cuts with the jigsaw. You can set up a piece of, set up a 2x4 along where you're trying to cut and really clamp it down hard, so you have a nice guide. There's ways to do it. If you guys want to know more about that, I'm going to be making some more videos, DIY van builds as we get into this next van build. So yeah, so that was pretty much it for this video. If you guys liked it, make sure you drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be posting some more DIY van life videos. And there's obviously a lot more tools out there, but these are just some of the ones I wanted to highlight for you guys. So, alrighty, we'll see you in the next video.